in person, live and in person. Pierre LeBrun. We were just talking. Was that your first TSN trade deadline show?
I'm pretty sure it was. And as I said to you, I was on my phone, which back then was a BlackBerry.
Right.
And I was in the middle of something. And Bob McKenzie nudged me. I think he said, "Look up." And I look up, and there you are with a T-shirt with my ugly mug on it. And I said, I guess I'm part of the TSN family now.
Absolutely. Yeah. Once you get your mug on one of my T-shirts,
15
you're part
years
of the team.
ago.
That's crazy, right?
What's up with that?
And we're still doing the same stuff every time, and I love it. It's so much fun. I wanted to talk to you about Vincent Trocheck. At the Olympics, you were there. You saw it. You know, a lot of people question him being on the team in the first place and Bill Guerin selecting him. He ends up playing a massive role for Team USA, really raises his trade value, if anything, Pierre. And now he is #1 on our trade bait board. So what are you hearing about Vincent Trocheck?
Well, he was part of a penalty kill for Team USA that went perfect in the Olympic tournament, so let's not forget that. Yeah, he got scratched on Thursday night. The Rangers' asking price remains high, but I think they feel this is their window to move him. So they're trying to make that happen before Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern. A couple of teams to keep an eye on. One is the Boston Bruins, I was told, are trying to get in there.
Oh, interesting.
Carolina Hurricanes, where he used to play.
Yep.
Before going to New York. The team that were perceived as front runners for weeks on him, in part because of what you just said, Team USA, Bill Guerin, the GM of the Minnesota Wild. The Wild appear out on it as we speak. Now, one thing I've learned over the years, what is true in this moment may not be true tomorrow, but Minnesota Wild, I think, believe it's they're a long shot now that it's the asking price is difficult for them. We'll see. Sometimes there's a poker game and all that.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't surprise me if the Wild got back into it. But, yeah, I mean, he's 33 years old, and I think the risk for the Rangers is that if they don't change their asking price and he remains a Ranger through the deadline, which may happen, by the way. He's got term left on his deal. Then he's 34 next year. Like, yeah, this feels like the moment with the apple being shined up here with his Olympic performance.
For sure.
I think if you're the Rangers, you got to move him in the next few hours here.
Really quickly, do you think the fact that he's made it known that he'd prefer to stay east, do you think that's what has handicapped the Wild a little bit, maybe?
I don't think so. I believe that, you know, and my colleague Michael Russo, who covers the Wild for The Athletic, reported this, that, yes, he'd like to stay east, but it's been amended to say that Minnesota's not too far west.
Right.
So I think Minnesota would be fine as a destination. But again, it's interesting, you know, that Boston's even trying.
Yeah.
Because, you know, they've tried to get their team younger, and they've done a really good job since last year when they were sellers, by the way. And he's 33. So what does that tell you about maybe the Bruins realizing, I don't know, that Pasternak is at his peak?
Yeah.
You know, you can go younger and still add veteran players, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Maybe they're trying to go for it. We heard a little crash earlier. Let's make it official. There we go. Let's talk about Sergei Bobrovsky, because he has suddenly emerged as someone that we would just love to see moved on Friday. It would be so exciting. The Panthers actually moved Jeff Petrie out on Thursday. So, Bobrovsky, that's a big ticket. That's a tough money move. Do you see it actually happening? Has there been a little momentum in the last few days?
Teams have called.
Yeah.
You know, goalie trades at the deadline are so rare. He also carries a $10 million cap hit. Now, if he were to move, I think there's no question that the Panthers would you know, take half of that, because really it's, you know, it's more about the cap hit than the salary at that point. So I think they'd be willing to do that. But I would also say this. Number one, don't completely rule out a last-minute extension. You know, one of the reasons we're having this discussion is that he hasn't been signed, and, you know, contract talks didn't go very well at the start of the season. Number two, I think there's so much respect for him that I don't think the Panthers are just going to move him for the sake of moving him. Like, in other words, if the best offer is a fourth-round pick, they're not doing that.
Right.
So I think they're going to show him a lot of respect, but if there's a legitimate offer, and again, I know teams have called over the last couple of days, then they'll look at it. But again, don't rule out the extension.
Colton Parayko, we thought we had a big Colton Parayko deal. He decides not to waive his no-move clause. So Colton Parayko not going to Buffalo, staying put in St. Louis. Do you see him staying put in St. Louis for good?
Well, I wouldn't say for good. He's got 4 more years on his deal. But I don't think he gets dealt in the next 24 hours, although I know that some teams were looking at it. I think it just was a very difficult decision for Parayko. And, you know, the way it was described to me, the way it went down is that the Sabres went to him and his agent, Jerry Johansson, and said, we need an answer. That was on Thursday. We need an answer. Very polite about it, but they couldn't let it go to Friday. The Sabres needed time to pivot to go try and trade for another defenseman, which I think they will. So my point is, of course, Parayko ended up saying, no, I'm not going, but it's mostly because, well, he was asked for an answer, so he gave one, which is that I'm not ready to say yes. I think this goes to a summer situation because now Parayko mentally understands that he may have to go through this for real again, and perhaps the summer is a different thing. You know, I won't rule it out that he could move on Friday. But this has been a difficult couple of days for the Blues because I think they really have tried to do tangible changes to their core. Lengthy conversations with the Sabres as well on Robert Thomas, as well as with other teams, namely Utah. And he hasn't moved yet either. And in fact, I was told by a source close to the situation that Thursday was kind of quiet on the Robert Thomas front. So, you know, keep in mind that even if there was a deal late overnight, let's say.
Yeah.
I mean, they still have to go to Thomas and his agent and say, what do you think? And he may need time to think about it.
Right.
So the fact that a Thomas trade did not happen on Thursday gave me the impression that it's less likely that it gets moved. But again, we'll see what Friday brings. But this is tough because the Blues were in some pretty interesting conversations also on Jordan Kyrou and Justin Falk. And again, some of these guys may still move before the deadline, but the fact that so many of them have either modified no trade or full no trade protection has really tied the hands of the St. Louis Blues.
Binnington as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's not easy. And listen, every team gives them away. I mean, no trades are part of life. You're not signing big guys on July 1st or to big extensions without getting no trades anymore.
Right.
That's just the reality of life.
Absolutely.
But it makes this part of it more difficult for sure, unless a player wants out, of course.
Yeah, of course. Really quickly back to the Sabres, do you see Jarmo Kekalainen now just going back? Maybe it's Rasmus Ristolainen, maybe there's someone else. Obviously, they want a defenseman.
Yeah, they want a defenseman. Ristolainen's a guy that they've checked on a number of times this week. There's Falk, there's OEL in Toronto. I mean, there's a number of defensemen still out there. I think the Sabres really want to get their D before the deadline.
And now we must talk about the Leafs, Pierre.
Uh-oh.
And the Flames, because our trade bait board is just dominated by Leafs and Flames, even though Nick Waugh did move. Do you expect, out of those two teams, who do you expect to be more active on Friday?
Toronto.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because I think, let's start with Calgary for a moment. I think that, as of Thursday night, there wasn't really anything on Blake Coleman that were making the Flames thinking they would even bring it to him.
Right.
Nazem Kadri, the same thing. I mean, Colorado going to Nicholas Waugh pretty much ended the Kadri conversation, and Colorado really did talk to Calgary a lot about Nazem Kadri. But the problem is they couldn't get Calgary to retain money on those 3 years left on Kadri's deal, and I get it from both sides. But it's going to be really hard to trade Kadri's contract if the Flames aren't retaining money. Montreal Canadiens have stayed in touch with the Flames on Nazem Kadri. They're not taking him at full $7 million a year, I'm telling you. It has to be Calgary retaining, and they may not want to because there's 3 more years left on that deal. Whereas I think, listen, the Leafs have some pending UFAs that are easier to move in McMahon and Lawton. They still are contemplating signing Bobby McMahon, but the Kiefer Sherwood contract could not have come at a worse time for the Toronto Maple Leafs.
That's true.
Because that fortified McMahon's camp in terms of their ask, which is north of $5 million a year, and I don't think the Leafs want to go there, at least not right now. So we'll see. I mean, it may be that trading him is the best bet. Same with Lawton. Ekman-Larsson, they would trade, but only if they get some tangible assets here. They really love this player. He's been a really good Leaf. He himself, as Darren Dreger has talked about, doesn't even want to leave Toronto.
Right.
He's got a couple more years left on his deal. Him and his family are happy in Toronto.
Playing great.
Yeah, but he only has a modified no trade. So, again, as of Thursday night, there wasn't a trade offer on the table that was making the Leafs blink or even close to blinking on OEL, but just takes one phone call.
If you were a betting man, would you say more likely for Lawton and McMahon to move than OEL?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Because you can still trade Ekman-Larsson this summer. You could trade him a year from now. You and I could be sitting together on the eve of the trade deadline in a year and be talking about Ekman-Larsson. So you don't necessarily have to do it now. But the reason the Leafs went through this exercise is that maybe their best deal was, or may still be, on the table before Friday at 3 Eastern.
Our buddy James Duthie really hopes you're right about that. You mentioned the Montreal Canadiens. Love to talk about the Habs.
Yeah.
They've been a bit quiet. You mentioned Kadri. Everyone's talking about the goaltending situation. Do you expect it to be quiet Friday, or could they potentially take a little swing at a goaltender here?
I don't think at goaltender. I mean, listen, I think they've discussed it internally, but I think right shot D has been a bigger thing. They tried to trade for Connor Murphy, who ended up going to Edmonton. I think they were disappointed not to get Connor Murphy. I know that they phoned Calgary about Zach Whitecloud, but the answer from Calgary is it would have to be an overpay because I think the Flames value his leadership and want to keep him around. So I think D for Kent Hughes is very important. And then, of course, yes, they've kind of stayed in on, to some degree, on Kadri and Robert Thomas, just to understand what was happening, just in case. I mean, they were never going to pay the big price on Robert Thomas, which would have necessitated the last time the Blues and the Habs talked, Michael Hage being part of it, for example.
This seems to be the name.
Plus.
Yeah.
Montreal's not doing that. So the price would have to come down. And even then, like if there's a way to get Robert Thomas, I mean, I'll just point this out, but then are you blocking Michael Hage from playing center on your team when he comes up to the NHL? Right. So there's a lot of things in the pot there for Montreal. But I will say this, I do think they want to do something before the deadline. But I think they're trying to be super strict about their initial philosophical approach to this deadline, which is we're just starting our path here as a team. We're not going to force something. We're going to stay patient, hope the market comes to us. But if it's not there, we can live with not making a deal.
And circling back really quickly to Calgary, I love that you brought up Zach Whitecloud. It seems like Calgary's in such a unique position because Kadri, Coleman like it there, don't necessarily even want to leave. And now Whitecloud seems to like it there. And now we've got a new arena coming. Like, could you see these players still being with this team as,
yes,
1-2 years when the arena is ready?
Yes, I think so, Jay. I would say of all the guys I just mentioned, this is just me reading between the lines a bit. I think Nazem Kadri's probably open to joining a contender more than those other guys. I think that he would have wanted to join a contender at this deadline.
Right.
So we'll see what that means if he doesn't get dealt. He may still, but if he doesn't get dealt, we'll see what that means for the offseason because I think he'll want to find a contender.
Man, you are doing great work for us. We love having you in studio. And tomorrow, Friday, you'll be a part of TradeCentre. Do you have your Harvey's order ready? Are you ready to go?
I forgot. I always ignore those emails, so I'll probably just go the whole day and just have water and coffee and pass out.
Don't do that to yourself, Pierre LeBrun. Don't do that to yourself. Pierre will be a huge part of TradeCentre Friday right here on TSN.